Water is a truly fascinating substance in all its forms. Here we have an electron microscope image of snowflakes. And this is one of my favorite images here because we can see how these beautiful snowflake crystals are formed. And one thing that you might not appreciate about snowflakes is that snowflakes actually have little miniature snowflakes growing on them. And even those little miniature snowflakes have even smaller snowflakes or crystals growing on them, something that we can't appreciate unless we zoom in at this level. So really beautiful how water does this. Now, water in its solid form is very interesting, but water in its liquid form is also very interesting as well. In fact, if we think about several different substances out there that are fairly common in our world, like oxygen is one that we need in order to live, oxygen has a fairly low molecular mass as far as gases go. It's about 32 atomic mass units, 16 plus 16, and its boiling point is about negative 183 degrees Celsius. You have to get oxygen really, really cold in order to see liquid oxygen. Now, if we talk about methane, which has the formula CH4, it has an even lower molecular mass, about 16 atomic mass units. Its boiling point is also very, very low, negative 162 degrees Celsius. So kind of like oxygen, you have to get methane very, very cold in order to see it at anything other than a gas. How about carbon dioxide? It's a little bit more massive. It has a molecular mass of about 44 atomic mass units. And in order to get carbon dioxide to something other than a gas, you have to lower it to about negative 78 degrees Celsius. That's where you get dry ice or solid carbon dioxide. But how about water? Water is a substance that is absolutely essential for life. Well, its molecular mass is about 18. It's almost the lightest of all of these molecules, almost as light as methane. But its boiling point is a whopping 100 degrees Celsius. You might expect that such a light molecule is going to have a very low boiling point, that it would exist as a gas at room temperature. But actually it does not. It has the highest of all these boiling points, and it actually exists as a liquid at room temperature, and you have to get it pretty hot in order to boil it at all. Why is that the case? Well, it's because of a very important intermolecular force that water has. That's called hydrogen bonding. Now, hydrogen bonding is a relatively strong intermolecular force that involves molecules that have hydrogen and that also have either nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine. So if you have a molecule that has hydrogen and has NO or F in it, there's a good chance it's going to have hydrogen bonding. Now, how does this work? Well, let's imagine water. Here we have a bunch of water molecules, and you might remember back in an earlier lesson when we were learning about how to draw these Lewis electron dot diagrams of molecules, we said that some molecules have a polarity to them. They have kind of a lopsidedness in their electron distribution. And water is certainly a very polar molecule. In fact, every single water molecule can be drawn like this, where the oxygen here has a partial negative pole, and the hydrogen side of the water molecules have a partial positive pole. So I can draw the pluses and minuses in like this. Now, we know that opposite charges attract. So that means that the positive pole of a water molecule is going to attract the negative pole of its neighbor. And so since water is a fairly small molecule, these molecules can get really close to each other, and that attraction is very strong. This is much stronger than most typical intermolecular forces that we deal with in chemistry. And like we said, this is called hydrogen bonding, where we have the negative pole of a molecule like water, that attracts the positive pole of its neighbor. And this only works if we have hydrogen and nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine in the molecule. So like we said, water is a good example of this. Ammonia, NH3, because it has nitrogen and it has hydrogen in it. H2SO4 is another good example of a molecule that's going to exhibit hydrogen bonding because it has hydrogen and it has oxygen in it as well. Now, what about H2S? Is that going to exhibit hydrogen bonding? Well, no, it's not. It has the hydrogen, but it does not have N, O, or F. How about NO2? Is that going to exhibit hydrogen bonding? No, because it has the N and the O, but it does not have hydrogen, and you got to have hydrogen in order to have hydrogen bonding. I think that makes sense at some level. Now, to get very specific here, in order for a molecule to exhibit hydrogen bonding, it has to have one of these three bonds in it. It has to have an oxygen-hydrogen bond, it has to have a nitrogen-hydrogen bond, or it has to have a fluorine-hydrogen bond, one or more of those. Now, the most common that we're going to see in chemistry in most molecules is the oxygen-hydrogen bond. That's very common. The second most common one is the nitrogen-hydrogen that we see in molecules that have hydrogen bonding. The fluorine-hydrogen is not quite as common, but it does pop up occasionally. So that's hydrogen bonding, a very important intermolecular force that you need to be aware of as we talk about the properties of liquids and the forces that hold substances together. Now let's talk about surface tension here briefly. Now, surface tension is most essentially described as the tendency of a liquid to form a sphere. So if we have this astronaut here on the space station looking at what looks like a ping pong ball here, this is actually a droplet of water. And notice that water has a very high surface tension. It forms that perfect sphere. Now, we don't see those perfect spheres on the Earth's surface because gravity causes things to sag on the Earth's surface. But when you're in space, on the space station, you have a perfect sphere for these droplets of water. Now let's see how surface tension works. Let's imagine that we have a beaker or a container of water that we have like this, and let's just focus on a water molecule at random. Let's say we look at this molecule right here that's kind of floating around in the middle of that beaker of water. Well, hopefully you would agree that that water molecule has attractions to pretty much every water molecule around it equally in all directions. Nothing too surprising about that. Or if we look at this water molecule right here, it's the same. It's going to have attractions to all the water molecules around it pretty much equally. No surprises. But what about the molecule right here? The one that is exactly at the surface. Well, it doesn't really have any water molecules directly above it in the liquid phase to attract to, but it has the ones that are on the sides of it, right and left, and it has all the molecules that are underneath it. We could say that that water molecule right there has a net downward force. Or the same thing with this water molecule right here on the surface. It has that net downward force. It's of course attracted to the molecules right next to it, but also to the ones underneath it. And this molecule right here, it's the same. It has a net downward force. So we can say that those molecules at the surface have kind of a tension between the molecules that are right there on the surface of the liquid. And that's why sometimes it appears that water or some other liquids seem to have kind of a skin on them. That's why insects like water striders, things like that, can walk on water, because it kind of looks like water has a skin. It doesn't have a skin, that's not what's happening, but there is a tension among all those molecules at the surface that allows that type of thing to happen. And of course, it has a net downward force. That's why you can take a cup of water and just barely add liquid so it goes a little bit over capacity without it overflowing. There's that surface tension on the liquid that tends to keep the liquid in the cup. Now, if you put too much, of course, it's going to overflow. But how about the molecules maybe on this side, this molecule right here? Well, there are no water molecules on the left of it, but it has attractions to all those water molecules to the right of it, as we can see. Or maybe this molecule right here on this edge of the container. It's going to have a net, I guess you could call that a net leftward force. And this molecule down here on the bottom, it's going to have a net upward force, I suppose we could say. So if we take a look at all these molecules that are on the periphery of that container, we can see that it's going to have a net inward force. And so that's why water tends to form this spherical shape. if we allow it to. So in surface tension, we have good examples of this, like raindrops. Raindrops have a roughly spherical shape. I know that if you've seen a water droplet hanging from the faucet, it kind of has a teardrop shape because of gravity. It tends to sag. Insects that walk on water, and generally speaking, we can say that the stronger the intermolecular forces in a liquid, the higher the surface tension is going to be. So something like water is going to have much higher surface tension than something like acetone, for example. And sometimes we can add things to break the surface tension. Like if you take water and you add soap and mix soap into there, well, the surface tension is not going to be nearly as strong than if you have just pure distilled water, because the soap basically breaks that surface tension. Now let's take a look at one last property of liquids, and this is called capillary action. And capillary action can be defined as the upward rise of a liquid through a narrow tube. And this works very well with things like glass tubes, because water tends to have a greater attraction to glass than it has to itself. Now maybe you've been to the doctor's office and they've taken a very small blood sample. Perhaps they've pricked your finger and they take a little glass tube and they just barely touch that to the little droplet of blood. And maybe you've noticed that the droplet of blood just jumps up, it rises. Now, why does that happen? Well, this is capillary action. Let's zoom in on this tube here and imagine what's happening at the molecular level. Now, if we take that capillary tube and touch it to some water, now blood is mostly water, of course, we can see that we have the molecules, but water molecules also have a pretty strong attraction to glass. In fact, a stronger attraction to glass than it has to itself. So it's going to stick to the sides of the capillary tube kind of like this. So we have a little curvature here. However, we also know that water molecules stick to themselves very well. They have a very strong intermolecular force, that hydrogen bonding that we just talked about. So it's going to pull the level up so that it is even again. Now that process is going to repeat. The molecules are going to stick to the sides of the container. And then the liquid molecules are going to pull themselves up to be even again. And this process is going to keep repeating. Of course, this happens very quickly. It happens again. It sticks to the sides of the container because the water molecules have a strong attraction to glass. And then it pulls the level up again. And it keeps doing this. And eventually, you get to a point where it has risen fairly high. Now, eventually, you get to a point where it doesn't rise anymore, and we have a liquid level that has risen fairly high up the tube. Now, examples of where this happens is, of course, in capillary tubes like they have at the doctor's office or the hospital, where they use that to take a blood sample. Trees and plants. I know that there are other things going on, things like active transport and things like that, but there's a little bit of capillary action going on here too. Also, if you've ever dried yourself off with a towel, we know that towels have capillary action, so you don't have to just stand there after you get out of the shower or get out of the pool in the summertime and wait for the water to evaporate off of your skin. You can take a towel and dry yourself off because of that capillary action. You could use a paper towel. Paper is made of, trees, and that allows you to dry your hands with the paper towel. Now notice that we end up with a liquid level that has kind of a curvature here. Notice that we have a curvature here. And this is called a meniscus. And so this phenomenon that we see here with liquid that has a stronger attraction to the tube than it has to itself causes the formation of a meniscus. And that's why if you look at a burette or a graduated cylinder and look very, very closely, you'll see that there's a curvature there. Now, it's not completely capillary action, but that certainly is a meniscus. And that happens because water has a greater attraction to the glass than it has to itself. So in this video, we've looked at three essential properties of liquids. Hydrogen bonding, a very important intermolecular force that you need to know about in chemistry. Surface tension, a really neat phenomenon. And capillary action. My name is Jeremy Krug. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, please consider slamming that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope to see you in the next video where we can learn some more chemistry together.